Hello, and welcome to another episode of What's on the Pile. I'm Nathan Besner, and joining me is Shane Lee,
Hey, how's it going?
Jane Belcastro,
Hello.
Matt Wagner,
It's Wagner.
and Jenner.
And Jenner.
Tonight we'll be going back to the Raid series with the Raid 2, Gareth Evans' sequel to the breakout action film. Rama is back, and this time he's going undercover to weed out police corruption amongst two crime families, and ultimately to get revenge for the murder of his brother. But first, we're talking tropes. Things that happen in movies over and over to the point where it's a joke. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger firing 28 shots from a revolver, or a montage to show physical growth of a character. So, everyone, what are some of your least favorite tropes? Oh, actually, before we get into least favorite tropes, I do want to point out what the trope, what one of the most famous tropes in film, which is the MacGuffin.
I like MacGuffins.
I do too.
Yeah.
This
They're
is
fine.
this is kind of to set the stage for what a trope is for those who don't know. Coined by Alfred Hitchcock for the 39 Steps. And he had a quote that he would give during interviews. He gave an interview to Francois Truffaut where he said, "It might be a Scottish name taken from a story about two men on a train. One man says, 'What's that package up there in the baggage rack?' And the other answers, 'Oh, that's a MacGuffin.' The first one asks, 'What's a MacGuffin?' 'Well,' says the other man says, 'it's an apparatus for trapping lions in the Scottish Highlands.' The first man says, 'But there are no lions in the Scottish Highlands.' And the other one answers, 'Well, then that's no MacGuffin.' So you see that a MacGuffin is actually nothing at all. The MacGuffin,
Okay.
the MacGuffin is one of the earliest, one of the most well-known examples of a trope, and I just wanted to bring attention to it before we get into it. What are some of your guys' least favorite tropes then?
The one that really sticks with me, if I may go first here, particularly among a lot of more recent movies, but it's been a thing for a while, is a villain with a relatable aim and motivation who just decides to go full evil at the end, presumably to prevent just sort of complete audience identification.
We were just talking about this.
We were just talking about this. This reared its head most recently in The Batman, where for 2/3 of the movie, the Riddler is just kind of handling shit that other people should have handled before it got so far that he had to handle it. But then he ended up jumping the shark. The Killmonger was right set. Was kind of lent into this one as well, but that's the one that jumps most to mind directly. The other thing that kind of gets me, and this is a consideration in a lot of superhero movies as well, although it did, I was looking for it a little bit in the Raid 2 and felt reasonably satisfied that it wasn't abused in that regard, is establishing somebody is unbelievably good at one particular thing and then they just forget to do that particular thing that they're extremely good at when the plot calls for it.
For example?
Well, I was afraid for a couple of moments, to jump way ahead in the Raid 2, that Hammer Girl was not going to be quite as good with the hammers when it came to the crunch as she should have been. But no, she was actually still pretty solid with the hammers all the way through.
I've got a
points in that regard.
when we come to that, I have an
one-
observation on that in particular. But go ahead.
The one the one that I can think of most directly recently, and this was a movie that was full of just lousy and misused and abused tropes, was the 355, where basically everybody who was good at anything forgot that they were good at the thing when somebody challenged them on it, and also included, people unironically saying, "We join forces." That's kind of another trope that kind of cheeses me off. But no, basically people who are good at a particular style of fighting and then completely forget to be good at that style of fighting when it would actually be useful. Or the CW's Flash forgetting that he's a speedster when the plot demands it, or the running time of the episode demands it.
That happens with a lot of superheroes.
It happens with a lot of superheroes.
I feel like
the
that's all.
CW Flash is really egregious on that
I
front.
feel like that's all of Star Wars too. I feel like they're fucking Jedi. They can Jedi their way through anything, and they just don't unless it's time for a fight, where they just bang sticks together.
the second they had those Jedi run flash speed, that's when they broke Jedi forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it that Luke jumped really high once, but I mean, that's not that big a deal. You had one really cool supernatural thing that Jedi could do, but the rest of it was a lot of sword fighting. I don't know.
Oh, a good example for the first one you mentioned. I think a good example of that one. I think I've only seen it once. Is Up. I remember relating to Peter O'Toole. It's Peter O'Toole, right?
I'm not sure. No, I think it was Christopher Plummer, wasn't it?
I think
as the old man?
Okay,
but yeah, it was Peter
as the old
O'Toole in
man?
Ratatouille.
Not the old man in the
Oh.
house. The villainous
Oh,
old
I don't
man.
remember.
The one on the island. Like he was right. He got screwed over, and then from what I remember, then he goes full evil by the end. I just remember clearly thinking like, hey, this guy has a point.
Oh
And,
yeah.
they did him
Yeah.
wrong. And I think he actually dies in the end, which is unusual for a Pixar villain. But again, I've only seen it the one time.
That makes, speaking of villains, the entirely evil person that is completely not developed, just maybe given a little reason. They were slighted a little bit, and then, you get nothing beyond that. And that happens a lot, especially in like Disney films. I mean, good Lord, those villains are like completely evil. There's nothing good to them. You don't get, but then see, that's why I like Maleficent so much. Because it like turned that completely around and gave you some background and
That's
See, I was gonna name that as a trope that I don't like, which is
I don't. Oh, you don't like the reworking.
No, I don't like the revisionism that has been brought to bear on a lot of the Disney villains now, that they've decided that Cruella, of all people, is now a sympathetic character because her mother was accidentally killed by Dalmatians, which is
so lame.
That was so, and then they develop her as this bad girl of fashion, and the whole time I'm going, yeah, and this is the woman who wants to skin and sell Dalmatian skin coats in the 101 Dalmatians movie, in which she was just the center of all evil.
And she gave the original Dalmatians to the couple.
As revisions went, that one was
so
particularly
that was a
radical.
little clunky.
I think I would have liked Cruella a lot better if it hadn't been Cruella. If it hadn't been working as its source material, I would go so far as to say I actually really liked that movie, given that there is absolutely no way that it could function as a prequel to the 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You cannot humanize a dog killer. You can't do it.
No, you can't.
Not
well, I mean, and on a similar point, I mean, Maleficent was basically a baby killer. Just she took 16 years to do it. So I love. It's weird because I like of Maleficent. I thought they did a really good job visually, and I'm not faulting Angelina Jolie in her acting in that at all. But the convolutions they had to go to try and make her a wounded, sympathetic character, I thought was disingenuous because it was in a way coming after the audience and saying that, oh, you thought she was bad. Well, this same character, you didn't know her history about how the world had beaten her down beforehand. And we're like, no, because it hadn't. In the previous story, we knew her backstory. She was an evil fairy. And you don't fuck with evil fairies.
It's our story, but we got it wrong the first time.
Yeah, but I don't feel like they. I don't feel like they explained enough. But I don't remember it because I don't really love.
And I'm not. This isn't an attack in any way. I mean, aesthetics will differ.
Yeah.
I will say that this sort of combines the point I just made with Andy's, in which the trope I really hate that I see more often than not is a film being sort of morally chicken shit, in that it will present the conflict to you, and it will attempt to present both sides, and it will build up to this point, this crisis point, in which our hero has to make a decision, and after the hero makes a decision, they are completely relieved of any culpability of anything bad that came from it. The example for all the world that keeps coming back to me is actually in Hotel Transylvania 2, which is all about how Drax's grandson is reaching the age in which he might be a vampire or he might not be. And it goes through all these convolutions about how will Drax live with his son. Not, it's looking like he's not going to be a vampire. He's going to be just a normal human. And how will Drax live with this? And there's so many metaphors you can pull. Shaming the family. There's is your son gay? There's and weirdly, because they include Mel Brooks in there as the great-grandfather, they get a very strange Jewish angle going on in there about Orthodox Judaism. And then
It's true, they do.
At the end, Dracula comes to accept that his son is a human, and at that moment the son turns into a vampire. And it's like, oh good, your kid's straight after all. It's so...
It was just a phase.
It's so morally chicken shit.
Yeah.
In that they make the sacrifice, and then the world rewards them, and it's okay. It wasn't actually that in the end anyway. And that's the trope I hate.
Yeah.
That kind
remember
of reminds
that
me of a
one
lot
well.
of books that are very popular. That you have the plain person. I guess I don't know why it made me think of this because it has nothing to do with that. But you got your plain normal person, or maybe not normal, but maybe their weakness is their strength. You know what I'm saying? It happens a lot in urban fiction, and it's oh no, they don't have any magical powers. Well, it turns out they've got the best kind, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, come on. I mean.
That's one reason I liked in Encanto that Mirabelle never had a gift
Right.
ever.
Yeah.
But she did. She
Yeah.
did. She had a great gift. I mean, 'cause
Well,
she was the glue. She
yeah.
was the glue, and that's to be applauded.
Yeah, but she didn't get the ability to throw fireballs or anything like that.
I do hope she
Right.
got her own bedroom, though. I hope she didn't end up in that tatty little nursery for the rest of her life. But other than that, that was wonderful. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Tangled.
Can't do a lot.
Tangled actually did some subversion on the on some Disney tropes as well with their villain, where she was a fully fleshed out villain. God, I've forgotten her name, but the fake mother who eventually
Mother Gothel.
Yeah, that's it.
Mhm.
I love their depiction of a narcissistic relationship or a child's relationship with a narcissistic parent in that film. They really explored that idea and took it to as far as they could, and eventually she gets thrown off a building and turns into ash, and that's great. But
A little bit of catharsis there for you.
a little bit, yeah.
Mm.
But no, they portrayed the relationship in a very mature way, and I thought that was very interesting about that movie. Considering so many tropes come from Disney in the first place.
Yeah.
My
Certainly
least,
popularized, if not originated.
my least favorite being the death of the parent to motivate the child.
The dead
Yeah.
mother
Mhm.
story.
The dead mother story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or more rarely the dead father story, but usually the dead mother story.
Yeah, Lion King, dead father. But I look at The Land Before Time as my ultimate example of the dead mother story, because that's the one where I was in the theater and said, "When's the mother gonna die?" really loudly, and then she
Oh.
fucking died like a scene later.
Yeah.
What about Bambi? Which I don't think I've
Or
even seen.
Dumbo.
Yeah.
Well, she doesn't die in Dumbo.
Well,
No.
she doesn't
Yeah,
die in
he
Dumbo.
But-
gets taken from her, right?
It's highly depressing. It's a very depressing
Yeah.
film, very dark film.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I liked Dumbo.
Yeah.
Even
I
well,
actually liked Bambi. I saw it for the first time in like 30 years recently, and largely from a technical aspect. It's some of the most beautiful animal animation they ever
Yeah.
did.
it is gorgeous.
Why do you suppose so many heroes are like in movies are orphans?
Joseph Campbell.
See, I think it's just the severing of all connections that are holding back the main characters so they can do whatever they want. And it all
Yeah.
kind of stems from the same thing. Like, there's the trope of the male character being motivated by the rape or death of his wife or girlfriend or
Gross.
yeah, and I think that's the same thing. I think that's the same mentality.
Or his puppy.
Or
Yep.
That was
John Wick.
That kind of worked.
It did.
well.
But
They
it was
subverted
bad.
the trope,
Yeah.
They did.
and when you subvert the trope, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I have one that I don't hate really. I kind of want to see it played with. It's the plotting, slow-moving killer, Mike Myers, Jason, whatever, teleporting
Mhm.
everywhere. I would love to see him. I would love to see those scenes where we just follow them and follow their route and figure out how they get from place to place, which would be impossible because those movies
Well-
aren't written for that to be plausible. But I would love to
So-
see like a Tucker and Dale versus Evil twist on it, where the killer's just walking around like an idiot, and the teenagers just run towards them. They just happen to find him wherever he goes, and that's how
That-
he gets to
Do
them.
it.
That movie exists.
Oh, does
Yes,
it?
it's called Behind the Mask, The Rise of
I've
Leslie Vernon.
Right.
seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that. I
Yep.
forgot about that.
I love that movie. I love
was a
it
good
so
movie.
much.
I was watching Nate. I'm like, I know what he's going
Yeah,
to say.
I was so excited.
Because in that movie they demonstrate the stalker walk and how he accomplishes it, which is he just is really good at predicting when people look behind them. So he's booking it right until they turn around, and then he shifts to the plotting gate. Well, probably the best line in the whole film is, "You would not believe how much cardio I have to do."
I was gonna say, Jane, you haven't seen that one. We need to put that on
No.
the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
that's fun.
haven't. I haven't seen that one. Well, another trope that I particularly I was discussing this with Jenner. All zombies want to eat your flesh or your brains.
Yeah.
And Jenner actually had a
Yeah, no,
it's-
I've been putting this. I mean, leaving aside voodoo zombies who don't get enough
Mhm.
credit in their own right. I
Right.
have been saying for years, and my impression is The Last of Us varied upon this a little bit, except they didn't do what I wanted, and why would you not do that? Which is why don't we just have zombies that are based on a variation of the cordyceps fungus, and then proceed to do exactly what the cordyceps fungus makes ants do, which is swell out their butt, crawl to the top of a tree, and stick their ass out and stay there.
I guess
don't
it
know,
wouldn't make good television.
It's more of a short story idea
Yeah.
than a feature idea.
Yeah.
That's not something you can string out for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Another-
But I
yeah.
wish somebody would at least do it as a short story or a short film or something.
I'm trying to remember, but
Why, why are zombies always trying to eat you? Why aren't they just sad, lumbering, gradually deteriorating chunks of can't do shit?
That's the zombie movie that's never been made, because that's the post-humanity zombie movie. Nobody's ever made that movie where it's just a land of zombies and we see what Earth is like after the apocalypse has finally concluded.
believe it or not, they kind of did do that in some of the Marvel comics, not in a movie, but in the Marvel comics when they did the Marvel Dead
Marvel zombies.
zombie world kind of stuff. Marvel Zombies, thank you. They have essentially the entire world has been converted, and there's just a handful of survivors running around. We don't really spend too much time with them, and it's kind of an occasion when one turns up and everybody chases it down. And of course, the superheroes get to it first because they're all zombies as well.
I've also
Yeah.
completely forgotten about Planet of the Apes, which is
Mm.
essentially that.
Yeah.
Mm.
What happened after the apocalypse? Well, apes took over.
Yay.
Great.
Ugh.
I have a list of other tropes that I wrote down that I'd like to go through really quickly. The grand gesture trope. I'm sure we all know that one. Yeah, the say anything,
Yeah.
the say
Oh.
anything boombox.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
they make note of it in a satirical way in what's that Christmas movie with Bill Nighy?
Love
Actually.
Actually.
Love Actually. That's
With
it.
Andrew Lincoln and the
Yeah.
paper signs or whatever.
Yeah.
Wait, that's
no,
what we're
no,
talking
not
about?
that one. There's a
Oh.
grand gesture from the kid when he's going to find his
like
girlfriend.
penetrating airport security.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right, with a big swell of music. Yeah, they kind of subverted that, but really just did it in Love Actually. But there's the grand gesture. There's the trick ending, which was mastered by the usual suspects, but has been driven into the ground by M. Night.
Oh, just having a twist to throw everything else into a different perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
even take that as a trope. That's more like story design.
as much as anything else, I think that
I think it's a trope.
really
Right.
started becoming a very, very regular thing with the rise of slasher movies in the 70s. And sort of hit critical mass in the 80s.
Ever
Like
since
the
Carrie.
the whole "the
Yeah.
killer is never dead" thing.
But the purpose
Yeah.
then was to leave room for a sequel in case it made enough money, whereas the purpose
sometimes,
now,
sometimes not. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, they usually trace it back to Carrie with the trick ending in which
Yeah.
Carrie is actually dead, and it's a dream sequence that shows her still being alive.
I mean, De
So-
Palma's kind of a master of that sort of thing, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it later became conveniently a way of making sure there was room for a sequel, but
Yeah.
it wasn't always
I don't.
intended that way.
For example, I don't think Bob Clark was ever particularly intending for there to be a sequel to Black Christmas, because, good Lord, how in the hell would you make a sequel to Black Christmas?
they made a sequel to Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Yeah, they should have never. Yeah, except
They
they
made
should have.
sequels.
They should have never actually made that in the first place. Whereas Black Christmas was a great fucking movie.
What else we got? We got the montage originating
I
from
like them,
Battleship
though.
Potemkin, which it can be a brilliant film tactic. It can be very well done, and it especially was big in the 80s.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's the physical prowess thing. Like Karate Kid had it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Rocky
Rocky.
was kind of the gold standard on that one for several decades there.
Yeah.
Team America World Police.
Which actually took was that no
Yeah.
it was South Park that took the Rocky the Karate Kid song and used it.
Mm.
I recently
Yeah.
rewatched Boogie Nights, which has a montage near the end set to God, what's the Beach Boys song? God Only Knows, near the end,
Yeah.
showing where they've all been
Really?
after their porn careers, which was brilliant.
The climactic montage is, or the wrapping everything up montage, which P.T. Anderson has actually used on several occasions, is a very different animal from the
Time
Like the
passes,
training
montage.
montage.
getting from point F to point G montage. Like
Yeah,
the
like I
mid
think
movie
Revenge of the Nerds did a lot of that, didn't
Yeah.
they?
yeah, the mid movie
Yeah.
montage is a very different deal.
And of course, Animal House probably being the most famous example.
I can't actually remember that.
what-
Really?
Right at the end.
Yeah,
Well,
at
no,
the
that,
end.
that,
Oh,
well,
you
that
were
was-
talking about the.
well, the
Oh,
what
okay.
happened to
Yeah.
them cards is a very different animal in its own.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even necessarily characterize that as a montage. That's just the character wrap up
Mhm.
for somebody that we aren't going to see anywhere else in the movie.
Mhm.
I'd make it a montage. It's a series of shots.
I mean, yeah, technically, okay. I mean, in the absolute sense, I mean, all of this is a montage. If you were to cut this exchange out of this episode, and so that the episode was, I mean, the episodes consist of 2 shots. Well, congratulations, we're a montage.
Yeah,
Well, no, a
films that do
series-
not have
This-
films that do not have montages. Alfred Hitchcock's Rope.
yeah.
That's about it.
Beyond the
I guess
Infinite 2
Birdman.
minutes. Nifty little Japanese movie I saw recently.
What else we got? We got the ugly girl in glasses becomes beautiful when glasses come off.
I feel like that's an entire
Yeah, I mean,
genre.
we
It
did
is
one
a
last
genre.
we did one last week. This girl
Yes.
looks like Natalie Wood her entire life.
Yeah,
Sees
so-
herself in the
Yeah.
mirror and is like, "Oh, I'm pretty." I'm like, "Yeah, you're
Yeah,
Natalie
you already
Wood."
were.
particular
You already
substrain
were.
of particularly teen, but not necessarily rom-coms.
Right.
I mean, realistically, rom-coms are probably the subgenre of movies that rely most thoroughly on tropes most of the time, mostly because they're working against a very specific audience as their primary focus, even if that's not their only focus. The other one, actually, this was on my list of montages that can be a little bit annoying, but realistically, if they were used less, would slit the throats of about 4/5 of all existing romantic comedies, which is just let the person explain themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
bothers
That-
the
that-
shit out of me. That
Third
always
act
kills me.
misunderstanding that ends up moving the plot in, like I say, about 4 out of 5 romantic comedies and a lot of other movies besides. It's just
It's filler.
Would you shut up and listen for a moment?
Just shut the fuck up.
Try to explain this.
Here's one that's near and dear to my heart because I hate it so much.
Okay.
Fat people constantly fart.
Oh.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's
a
gross out comedy of the 80s.
That's a
That's about it.
particularly low class of comedy to begin
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
always have that fat character who will give out a fart when they've fallen over or something like that, and that became really big in the 80s, which is
Yeah.
like trope haven to me. Like
Mm.
Like the
they
Monster
really
Squad.
The tropes
Yeah.
have been around then or before. The tropes have been around since then, but that was where they ripened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice choice of words.
Phrasing deliberate.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Somebody saying he's right behind me, isn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know. Those can be fun, but yeah, it is overused.
Overused at this
Yeah.
point. It's no longer funny. There are a lot of quips like that are no longer funny, like hello.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't want to hear anybody say hello ever again.
Yeah.
It's done. It was done in the 90s.
And of course, there's the drinking game that I generated and realized very quickly how dangerous what a dangerous tool I had put into the world right after the beginning of lockdown, which is the I Get It drinking game, which is simply if you're watching television or movies, and somebody says I get it, take a drink. If they say, I get it, and they do not, in fact, get it, take 2 drinks.
And we have actually modified this to where we just mime it when they say it because we don't want to die.
We don't want to die, exactly. And I think it was Wagner who added on when somebody says, I got this, you finish your drink.
Yeah, that's a particularly bad one in
Wagner,
comics
we
as
Lost
don't
your
well.
hear
audio,
you.
Matt.
Yeah, that's a particularly bad one in comics as well.
Yeah.
The I got this, we got this, whatever, as the crisis turn moment has gotten really kind of out of hand.
Now, I do like and do think is a little bit underused is let me get this. That can be an interesting character moment.
I would put that with with Schwarzenegger's catchphrase, I'll be back. It's the stronger character protecting a weaker character.
Yeah, no, or even it's like, this is speaking directly to my skill set, but not necessarily dismissing the other person. I don't know. Yeah, that's a phrasing that I think accomplishes a similar thing, but it isn't used nearly enough, and I think is dramatically a little bit more interesting.
I mean, I think a good example of that, even though I don't like to talk about this artist anymore, but the end of Serenity when River says my turn.
Yeah.
And it's the first time she's really taken agency over herself, and she goes and destroys everybody. But yeah, that's what I thought of when you just said the whole "let me get this" thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
The
point is there are other ways that particular effect can be accomplished that are often more interesting for their characters.
I've got one more for you guys. The old black inspiration for the young white main character.
Oh yeah.
The
magical
Negro.
black man.
Yes. Yes.
I think Spike Lee coined that. He used a different word, but that was the first time I heard it when he was talking about the Legend of Bagger Vance.
I have to allow I am much more fond of the Negro who knows better. It's like
the one who leaves midway through the movie is like, this is not going to end well,
like
and just gets the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah.
The dude
you're
from Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, or you're going where? Good luck with that.
I still prefer it to the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. So.
Oh yeah.
Come on. Seriously.
I have to allow a real life weakness for those in the past, so I mean, it would be disingenuous of me to completely poo-poo that.
Yeah, but if you were really in that relationship, you'd be, like, it's chaos. It's absolute chaos.
I think out of all of us, I might be the only one who got close to it with Mint. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Jane. You were wearing the stripy socks when we met.
Well, that doesn't mean I didn't pay my bills and take care of myself, and I didn't cause disasters everywhere I went and just laugh them off and somebody else will take care of that because I don't
It's an infantilizing trope.
It's Phoebe from Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a level of destructive bimboness. I mean, but they're destroying. And I can understand why it works in some movies, where the woman is like super chaotic and kind of tears down the straight-laced guy and gets him to kind of live his own life, live his life better.
Something
But
wild.
come
Something
on, he'd be
Wild, I
taking.
was just thinking.
Yeah, there are other ones too.
Granted, that was Something Wild is a movie about imminent physical peril from moment to moment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think
What's
the
that one
thing about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl that I really dislike is that it makes light of mental health issues. Because that's really the main
True.
problem with the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is that she usually has mental health issues that they're playing for laughs.
it's either
I don't know. Do
bipolar
you-
or borderline personality disorder.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that I'd never even actually connected that. I was more thinking it was just like somebody who was, well, let's go ahead and say so narcissistic that they can't imagine that, somebody wouldn't, clean up their mess for them
Mm.
because they're cute.
Well, I think it's been a while since I've seen it, but I think 500 Days of Summer sort of turned it on
Yeah.
its head by revealing at the end that she actually sucks.
Yeah.
At the
Oh,
end, at
yeah.
the end, it's like fuck this girl, and then I don't remember how it ends. I think he doesn't end up with her.
No.
I think he
No,
meets
no, he
no
doesn't.
he meets another girl named Autumn, I believe, at the very end.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like,
Wow.
isn't it the same director who did Spider-Man's hand coming out of his
Yeah, it's
his
Mark
web?
Webb. Yep. I
He
think
can
that's
go-
the movie
he
that
can
got him
go
those
a-
jobs.
Yeah. He can go a little bit over the top on occasion.
I don't know. After a while, I did kind of like 500 Days of Summer, although seeing it right after a breakup, I did feel like an absolute man of steel that afternoon. I do like the line, "This is not a love story; it's a story about love." But that's just sort of incidental to what we've been talking about.
The only thing I remember about it is my stepson's friend from high school's in it. He's billed
Oh,
as
wow.
the douche.
The douche.
He's on every television show, and he's got a Disney Channel show. I can't remember.
Yeah,
what
he's been
it's
like
called.
8 different thugs on Law and Order. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
The other thing I remember from that movie was the Hall and Oates montage with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. That's the thing that particularly sticks to me.
We
Anyway.
love a good montage. Okay.
All right. Well, why don't we take our break there? We will be right back. And we're back. Next up, we'll be talking about The Raid 2, Gareth Evans' follow-up to The Raid Redemption. In it, Rama is back after his brother is murdered by gangsters. To bring the culprits to justice, Rama must go undercover with the criminal syndicates of Jakarta. This was on my pile. Who else hadn't seen it?
It was on my pile.
It was on mine.
It was
No, I'd seen it
was
before.
kind of on mine because we all loved the raid when we did it for the other episode, and
Oh, yeah.
I've been wanting to do it, and I just went ahead and watched it on my own a couple weeks ago. So then I watched it again this past week.
Yeah.
So
All right.
It's super rare for me, but when I actually saw this one come out on DVD, I actually jumped on it and got it off my pile quickly, which is not something that happens very often. So, but I figured I'd seen the raid, wanted to see the follow up.
So how did everybody feel about the brother just buying it before the credits?
Ugh.
I had a moment of, we're going to talk about Alien 3. That's
Yeah.
going to come up.
That
And
crossed my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, granted, nobody had the level of affection for Andy from the Raid Redemption that anyone had for Hicks and Newt,
Newt.
from Aliens.
Yeah.
That being said, it is a strong motivation to bring Rama back in, so to speak. Granted, this movie ends up going a lot of places that I didn't see coming.
Mhm.
I didn't realize how much more scope it was going to have in comparison to its predecessor.
Because that was like one day, right? The raid took place
it was
over
probably
one day.
it was almost real time practically.
Yeah.
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 A couple hours.
A couple of hours, and this
Whereas
spans what,
this-
4 years?
At least
At
three.
least 3, yeah. He was
At
in prison
least
for
3,
2
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And it wasn't linear either, which always drives me a little crazy, but that's all right.
Oh,
Yeah,
right
there
on-
were.
Figured it out.
I
They
did
didn't
get
lean on
lost
that
a
too
couple of
much.
times.
Just
Yeah, at
particularly
the
on the
beginning,
first
I was
third
like,
of the
where,
movie, yeah.
what? And then I got it. And
But at
the
yeah,
same
I mean,
time,
after
the-
he's in prison, everything straightens out.
Now, of course, reading up on the background of this is more or less this was the screenplay that Evans had wanted to make originally, but then he ended up kind of doing something much more scaled back that ended up becoming The Raid, and then he just readapted the screenplay that he had originally written for this when he ended up getting the larger scope and budget and resources for it. And it is a big frickin' movie.
It did not disappoint.
Gigantic.
I've got to
yeah.
say, it actually, I've gotten to the point where I'm tired of 2.5-hour movies. I just think they're too long. It was just too long for me.
I agree. And I will say also,
was.
right off the bat, like, the violence in this was a bit much for me. And I usually don't have a problem
Really?
with violence. I don't remember the first one being quite this gruesome.
Really?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. There were definitely some visceral effects in the first one that this one kind of paled against here and there. This one, however, just made up for it with sheer quantity of grievous bodily harm.
Well, and
there's
quality. I mean, we kept going. How did they do that? How is that person
Exactly.
actually
Watching this
still
movie,
alive?
yeah, exactly. And not how are these characters still alive? It's how are these actors? How are these stuntmen still alive?
It's
yeah, a lot of
stunning.
long takes.
I'll tell you how they
gruesome
did it. They shot it at like 22 to 20 frames per second.
Yes,
Mm.
they
That's
did.
what they
I
did.
saw
Slightly,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. And it
Even
makes
so-
everything look faster and more brutal. That's what happens
Yeah.
when you film at that frame rate.
But the effects. I mean, when one at the end where
When one character gets his head blown off,
yes,
literally.
that was it. How?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. Did that? I did. I saw no
They
indication.
did describe how they did
And
this.
can
That's
definitely
a
see
pretty
a few,
simple
I
effect.
thought-
can
Is
definitely
it?
see a few
It could be
digital
done.
seams here
I
and
didn't
there,
see
but
any seam. It was nuts.
I
But then
counted.
again, I guess Nate would probably know better than me.
I did.
I-
I have to admit, I deconstructed this film physically a lot
Mhm.
because a couple of the effects were good enough that I was like, how did they do that and how would I have done it?
Yeah.
But the shotgun blast to the face is just simple cut with a composite mask.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did that to my head once.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Nate. In particular during the jail riot scene,
Mm.
what was your impression of that scene? How many cuts would you have guessed went through there
Ooh, it was.
during the majority of the fight?
I'd say for the entire fight, there must have been 200 cuts.
Okay,
But
it's
most
not
of it
that
was
much.
most of it was designed as one single fluid camera.
Yeah, the single fluid
But the
camera
cuts,
movement.
but there are cuts.
There are
There are
cuts. There are
cuts.
cuts. I listened to the commentary track on this one, and the director was actually calling out the cuts at each one, and it's where you would expect.
cool.
A body
Yeah.
gets thrown past the camera, so it provides a momentary block, so they
Invisible
could put the
light.
digital in there to cut to the next take.
I want to
I
know
would-
how. I want to know.
But I
how,
thought it was very well done. I'm not a particularly knowledgeable action film fan. I like them. I don't know martial arts that well. And I loved sort of displays like this, but it impressed the hell out of me being something of a novice in the field.
See,
Yeah.
I had a problem with the prison fight scene. I thought that it was a little bit sloppy in a lot of ways because visually you can't really tell who's doing what to whom when you have
Yeah.
that much
they're all
mud
that
on
much
people.
mud. Yeah. How do they
Yeah.
how
I
do they
thought that
know?
was the point of
How
it,
do they
though.
tell each other apart? Because he's just someone's fighting, then someone comes up behind them. How does that person know who they're coming after? I really want to know how that prison dealt with most of their population being killed in one incident. And who and basically just Rama and what's
Well-
his name? Ucho being pretty
Ucho.
much the only two people
Ucho.
left alive at the end of it. It seemed.
And apparently it didn't add anything
Well-
to their prison sentences. So are
Nope.
Yeah.
catastrophic prison riots just par for the course in Indonesia, kind of like, I don't know, political riots in Paris or what?
Or just people walking around with
Yeah,
weapons in broad daylight, walking around with a machete, walking around with hammers, just in
Yeah.
broad
Yeah.
daylight. No one seems to notice.
It seems like the Wild West out there. It's crazy.
It's the Wild
Well,
East.
yeah.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. No, that's fine. That's fine. God.
So
I-
I'm also curious on some of the plot points, just because it took me a couple viewings to figure out exactly what went down in some of the scenes, Did you know who it was that the son character, the one who executes his father, when he went to visit Bijou and was executing those people that Bijou brought out, did you realize who that was he was killing?
They were
I
people
did.
in part of the prison fight, right? Who came
Yeah.
after him?
Yes.
That was the
they
prison
were
gang
like
that
the
was messing with
they were the instigators of the prison gang. I didn't get that till the first time through. And did you follow the logic of the tattoo on the wrist that he saw there?
Mhm.
That I followed.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did. I
Okay.
got that.
No, I didn't.
Was it?
I had to have that explained to
Well,
me.
was it just that he was willing to sell out his own people? Was that significance of that, or
Well, yes, and because he had Uko slit the throat of those 5
right?
guys.
So he's willing to give
And
up his
so-
own people. So
But did you notice? And this I thought was pretty good.
Bijou was the
that-
one who tried to kill him in the
they-
first.
Yeah, but they did
okay.
not. They did not say a word as he was cutting their throats.
I did think that
wouldn't
was
you
odd.
normally be like, "Screw you"? No, it's because they were doing it. They knew why they were being sacrificed. They probably were
Mhm.
getting something out of it for their families or something like that. I mean, they knew it. They were good little soldiers lining up to die for their boss's cause. That was
Yeah, I-
crazy.
Yeah.
That
I
had to
know
be
that-
a lot for the families to go
Yeah.
through that for me.
I know that I've mentioned something like this probably more on Bastards than here, but just once I am waiting for, and I think it may have happened once or twice, but I've been waiting for ages for something where the one ill motherfucker like Iko Uwais in this movie is barreling through hundreds of goons, and they get to the final boss or the boss man in charge or what have you, and at which point is like, you have killed 200 of my best goons. I give. Please don't kill me, Mr. Superman.
Well, that kind of did happen
what
in
the
the
first
Raid
one
Redemption.
happened.
Yeah,
It
that
did.
was
Kinda
how the
did.
first
Yeah.
one ended.
Yeah.
They did a lot of subversion of action movie tropes in the first one, and I feel like they embellished some action movie tropes in the second one.
Yeah, no, I mean that
Well, this one-
absolutely grueling fight at the end with the guy who's credited as, I suppose, the assassin. I kept thinking he's going to be like, nah, screw this, and just leaving. But no, he doesn't in this case.
No.
I love seeing the other guy from the raid come back.
Mad
Mad
Dog.
Dog.
Mad Dog.
Yeah.
Mad Dog.
As the Luca Brasi of this film.
And what a great character too. And they even fleshed him out. I mean, it was really good. I loved it. I
I
Yeah,
thought
with
do
only
have
with
to
only 2
admit-
scenes. Yeah.
I do
Well-
have to admit that if I were cutting this film down, those would be the first scenes to go.
I
but
made the same
liked them
comment.
so much.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
it struck me at the time as kind of an unnecessary subplot, but it was nice to see Mad Dog from the first movie get a little bit of more an elaborated role where he's actually able to show something on the order of tenderness and kind of sympathetic and empathetic qualities, and then of course they kill him with this movie's ultimate badass. Which I think may have been a statement of one-upping itself there. But at the same time, it felt like a little bit of a superfluous subplot. But at the same time, in the absence of having to cut it, I'm glad it's there.
Oh, I think we also needed to really villainize Uko, other than the
Yeah.
other than the karaoke scene, where he's
Yeah.
an absolute monster, just to show that he is this criminal mastermind who's willing to sacrifice essentially family for what he wants. Well, he
Yeah, and-
sacrifices literal family later, but before that, we kind of need to really understand what kind of person he is.
Yeah,
It's like I said,
but
Koso
on the other
was
hand,
sort of the Koso was sort of the Luca Brasi of this film, except unlike Luca Brasi in The Godfather, who gets talked up and then just gets stabbed in the hand and gets his throat slit. This guy ends up dissecting about 24 guys before he finally gets his.
The point should be made that Uko's plan was basically, I know how we'll start a war between the gangs. Let's set up the Saint of Killers and see if we let's try to take out the person who could probably kill all of us given notice. And maybe he's not the best at the long-term planning here.
No, because
No.
he sent all those guys after Rama. What the hell was the point of that? He was a nobody, a low-level guy. Why did he send 1,000 guys to kill Rama during his crazy scheme?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't know that guy. Let's let's see what he's made of with every guy I know in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still not quite particular scene, but
The
I don't know.
bathroom scene, is that
N-
you're talking about? The
I know what
bathroom
you're talking
stall?
about. I'm not sure
No, I'm
what
asking
led to
because
that.
Oh.
I want to
Yeah.
make sure
It-
that's what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
It also seemed like
Was
they
that-
were rioting before they broke in. Like, what was happening outside the bathroom? Like, he was chilling in the bathroom. There's just all this noise
Oh.
outside.
That's not
Is
even
that
what
what-
I was
is that what
talking
you're
about.
talking
But
about?
I was talking about the last when they all
Oh,
come after him, when they're going after each individual
Okay,
guy.
I thought you meant in the prison.
Why was he one of the individual big shots that they're going after? I don't understand why they did.
Oh, when
that.
the okay, that's another good question because it was the police coming after him.
Yeah.
Was it the police attempting to pick him up, not knowing he was undercover? Or was that the criminals paying off him?
I
think
assumed
the
it was the
latter.
criminals paying off the cops.
I assumed it was
to
the
go
latter
after
also.
him,
Right.
which makes no sense because he's a nobody. He's nothing. I mean, Uko says
Yeah,
as much.
by nature, he's
But he
supposed to be
wasn't.
nobody.
Yeah.
But he
Also,
wasn't though, because
also-
I mean, didn't some of the corrupt cops know?
No.
No,
Well,
wasn't
maybe
no.
maybe he was trying to divert suspicion from himself because this is the one guy he's actually buddy with, and if
Yeah.
the criminal gangs go after him as well, then obviously he couldn't have been behind it, and it all got futzed up by Rama actually surviving.
The fact that we have to have a conversation to get to that theory is a little off to me. I think.
Yeah,
and
That's true.
There
plotting.
are a lot of convolutions to the plot,
and also
to this movie.
not enough Rama. To be
Yeah.
honest,
Yeah.
it was like
Oh.
I think it was an
But
hour.
when we get Rama, oh my God,
I mean, when
do
we
we
do,
get Rama?
but I think it was around the hour and
Yeah.
a half mark where I realized we hadn't seen Rama do any fighting outside of prison. Like it was a lot of.
Yes, we had the porn den.
Oh, that's right. Oh, you know what? There's a
Okay.
detail I noticed in the porn den that's pretty disgusting. They have the people assembling the DVDs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them had pictures of 3 women. Some of them had
Yeah.
pictures of woman and dog.
And
Shows you. And
there was also
Jesus.
pictures. There were pictures of woman and horse too.
Oh, I didn't
Oh,
see the
I
horse.
didn't see that.
And of course,
Lovely.
they're kidnapping hitchhikers and having them be sodomized.
No, I think they're
Yeah.
just giving hitchhikers some money.
Well, yeah,
So-
they're
Come on.
maybe paying them,
The-
maybe giving them
Wait,
drugs.
this
instead.
was actually apparently a specifically Indonesian joke. Again, listening to the commentary track, can't take any credit for this. But what they actually said there is that in Indonesia they have high occupancy vehicle lanes, and there are people who will just stand by the start of the HOV lanes, and you can pull over and get one into your car and drive the length of the HOV section of the highway, and then give them a couple of bucks on the other end, and they go the other way. So they're not actually hitchhikers; they're
Oh.
just people there to beat the system.
Opportunists.
And there's a particular term for that, and that's the term they used when they said, "Where did you get this guy?" So, again,
Very
Had to be
good.
explained
Thank
to
you.
me, but
Yeah, but no
Interesting.
thanks. That fleshed it up.
No, that does. That makes
Not a
makes
very-
it.
Well, that
Funnier.
is
But
actually
yeah.
a consideration with the film that we noticed, particularly just watching the standard English subtitles on the Blu-ray in our case, which is the movie is polyglot in a way that the English subtitles will in no way
Mhm.
let on.
Yeah.
The Japanese.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
with Japanese, I think there's some Chinese mixed in there as well, along with the regular Indonesian, as well as that deeply accented
Yeah,
moment of
very
English.
short.
Yeah, which I
but-
would suggest that if you are going to watch it and you're English, go ahead and watch the hearing. What is it? The
SDH.
SDH version, because you'll probably get a lot more detail.
Now, it's a deeply convoluted plot, but the action of the movie is an absolute endurance test for those who don't really dig this sort of thing. But even then, just the fight sequences in this had, Jane and me giving each other the proverbial bruised forearm for pretty much the entire picture. Whenever anything was going to and we had that moment of, they're gonna have a car fight. They're gonna have a car fight.
Yeah, but
And oh my God, the car fight.
the car
Yeah.
fight.
I did miss the confined, environs of the first one. I mean, I like this movie, but I did miss, how claustrophobic it was and how self-contained it was. It was a little
I agree.
sprawling.
This
for my
was a
taste
lot
at
more
times.
expansive. As I say, it was leaning on kind of tropes from things like The Godfather. There's a little bit of The
Scarface.
Departed mixed in there.
Oh, I was
it-
going to
it-
say
Yeah.
I was going to say Infernal Affairs specifically because it
Well, okay,
feels
yeah,
almost
yeah.
exactly like
Right,
Infernal Affairs.
but was there much tension with Rama almost being caught? I felt like there wasn't, which should have
Not
been
really.
Very briefly.
should have been a
very
big
briefly.
with a story like this. This should be a big part of it, but it like pretty much wasn't at all. Especially, I mean, considering he was not involved in a lot of the plot.
And
Well,
how
I mean,
about
it-
that wife?
Yeah.
She was in the movie for like 2 scenes.
Yeah.
Let's just
3
get her out of the
years
way.
with no husband.
There is so
Ugh.
much.
Ugh.
They bought the plot in bulk, but basically all of the characters who are actually participating in the main plot of the thing are so completely wrapped up in their own affairs that there isn't really room for, whether Rama's going to get caught. He's not. Whether he's going to get back to his wife, maybe.
Well, I
I'm-
mean,
I'm
you know,
not
that
for
felt
one
like
Rama's home life is completely backburnered.
well, that
Yeah.
in the
Well, I'm
book-
kind of glad of that. I'm glad of that because the only way we could have gotten more of the wife in there was if she became involved in the plot,
and
Yeah.
I didn't
which
want that
means
at
the
all.
criminals
Yeah.
find out, and I didn't want that.
I don't think
either.
I wanted that one either.
I just
that
don't-
would,
I
that
saw
would
the
be a
devil.
trope too far.
I think they could have just not had the wife in the movie.
Well, then the
Right,
argument.
just
But
mention
I-
that his family is safe or whatever, and just kind of gloss over that. Is that
Yeah.
I
how you-
wanted her in
completely
there
keep her out
just
of it?
for like
Yeah.
that second of him missing her, of him missing his child growing up. I mean, 3 years.
Well, all they
That's
have to
dedication.
do is
You have
the-
to have some sort of feeling of dedication.
yeah, you
I
show him
thought.
looking at the cell phone. You show him looking at the name and the number, about to call it, and he's like
Well, you
tense and sad, and then he just ends call and he goes on.
you're
And
the
you
one
would
that
get
wanted
the
it.
same, the same
But you're
thing out
the
of it.
one that wanted him to be worried about him getting caught, and
No, I'm
that
not.
was to me. That was that moment where I was
think
like,
that was
"Oh
Shane.
crap,
Yeah,
he's
that's
gonna
me.
get
Yeah,
caught."
I wanted more of
Um,
that departed sort of tension with will they or won't they?
I
uh,
thought there was plenty of tension with that scene and with the bug.
was
And
the
him
bug.
being
Mm.
stripped down.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought there was plenty of that tension. So, old man, look at your balls.
Well, I mean, speaking, I do want to talk about the old man Bangun or whatever.
yeah.
That guy,
Yeah.
guy was that actor was amazing, and
Uh-huh.
that character, like he's almost like I remember Roger Ebert saying about Vito Corleone, The Godfather. You never see him do anything objectionable.
Mhm.
He just seems like a gentleman. You don't think about the crazy crimes that he's behind. This man, that father made me think of that. He seems wise and he wants to be a peacemaker at every turn, and you just forget that he's the head of this criminal enterprise, and you kind of root for him. And
Yeah,
when he goes
And then he
down,
you
beats
forget
the-
that-
and then he beats the ever-loving shit out of his son and gets
which
shot
he
in the face.
deserves. Yeah.
Yeah.
The son,
Yeah.
yeah, he totally deserves
Yeah,
that.
the
Yeah.
son's a hot mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an interesting character just because he plans things so poorly while convincing himself that he's a complete criminal mastermind.
Yeah.
And
He
he's
is an
so
ambitious man.
handsome. Oh, he's so
Yeah,
handsome.
no, I have to allow
Oh.
his haircut and style was frigging spectacular.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's,
It
I
did
mean,
help
his
us keep him separate.
cheekbones.
Ucho's
For days.
Demi Pompadour was almost a character in the movie in its own
Mm.
right.
That dude's whole facial structure is hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then his flawless English out of nowhere. That really
Yeah.
surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
loved
that
it.
caught me off guard.
I loved
He
it.
totally went into
Well,
like he went into like bro English, like right out of
No,
nowhere.
Of
he's-
course he did.
Is a gorgeous actor giving a brilliant performance as somebody who is a complete waste of a suit.
He was actually my favorite character because he was given the
Yeah.
most to do, I think.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
Hammer Girl?
Okay,
Nice.
Hammer Girl,
Hammer
Bad
Girl's our
Boy,
favorite
and Pickaxe
supporting
Pete.
character.
Did you
Those
ever
are, I
see,
love them. They're like the lock, shock, and barrel.
Did you ever see Sharkskin Man and Peach Hip Girl?
Ages
No.
ago,
No.
with you, I believe.
Yeah, movie I love, but it has this particular trope that is apparent in martial arts films where you have badass characters who look badass,
Mhm.
and that's it. They show up for one
Oh.
scene, they look badass, they do a badass thing. They show up for another scene, they look badass, and they do a badass thing, and then they get killed off.
Yeah, I mean, they're literally not characters. They don't have any. We don't know anything about
I
them.
would actually object to that. There's a couple of very small bits in the film. I mean, I honestly bringing her up as a favorite character was a joke, because obviously there are much more well-developed characters in there. But I thought they did pull just a little bit to give her some characterization. Her with her presumably brother baseball bat, and the key point, yeah, between the spinning the coin on the countertop, but the real key moment was when they exit to go to their last fight, and she is deaf mute and doesn't realize they're being called, and she gets her brother just grabs her, and she reaches back for the hammers on the table in such a oh my stuff kind of thing, and it actually was intended. And I felt did a good job of giving her an almost childlike nature in that moment, and showing that these two have each other and no one else, and they come from some sort of an environment where they only ever had each other, and that to me gave them more characterization than you badass looking character who does something badass and then is eliminated. So I thought there was at least a fainting move towards that kind of characterization.
Absent the greater context, I think that Bijou's team is interesting just because he is using a bunch of weirdo misfits as his go-to guys. Basically, you got a bunch of standard issue gangsters making moves against each other, and in the meantime, there's an anime gangster lurking on the sidelines.
Yeah. Yeah.
With an anime gangsters team. You were saying, Nate.
No, it felt a little Kill Bill to me with Go-Go.
Yeah, Go-Go, yeah.
I didn't like it.
You know what it actually
but
I didn't either.
Nate, this is for Nate. You know what this reminded me of? Or not Batgirl, Hammer Girl and Baseball Bat. It reminded me of Elden Ring, where you fight these bosses individually, and they're like so hard, and then later the game just throws them together, and you fight them both simultaneously. You're like, what the fuck? I mean, granted, Rama did.
It's a dual boss.
Yeah, granted.
Still wondering what would have happened if somebody had actually given Batboy his ball back.
He might have just been like, "Thank you."
Yeah, I was
just done the same thing. He would have just hit it again.
Granted, Rama didn't have to fight them individually first, but
yeah. And the interesting thing I thought about their fight, which I thought was, I mean, I'm sure this is just 101 in action films, but keeping in mind the weapons they were wielding and the damage they did with them previously, the fact that when Rama gets there, they only connect with him like twice, because she comes after him with those hammers and whiffs every single time. And I'm like, it's good, because if she had full bore hit him in any way with one of those hammers, I would not have believed he could have gone on to the rest of the movie.
Well, actually, to lean back into a trope that we were flirting with right after the end of the last segment, let's talk about grievous bodily harm in movies.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how much a human body can actually take versus how much a human body can take in a movie. The long-standing adjunct of Tony Stark's legs would have been broken. In this case, I'm amazed that our hero can still walk after one fight in this movie, and I don't mean like walk out of the scene. I mean like walk ever again.
Well, he's mostly
well, like with the
his chest opened up. I mean, the amount of blood that came out of him during the fight with the big fight? Badass. Yeah,
these people just got mad clotting agent. That's all I can
basically got that tendon behind his knee, between the calf and the knee, cut.
Yeah.
And he could still walk. I mean, he limped a little.
Gonna go with adrenaline is a hell of a drug.
I mean,
the man is, after the first movie, the man is basically made of scar tissue. So
I guess.
There were at least 3 points during the kitchen fight where I thought it was over, because I'm like, oh, the bad guy, he's done. But then he just gets up and they keep on going, and the amount of times he slashed him with his own weapon, like, and you see how much blood is on the floor by the end of the kitchen. It's unreal. Like I said, it got a bit much to me after a certain point. Like, it was just hard to stomach.
I
do have to love the prominent set cleaner credit in the closing credits.
It was like 2 different companies.
Heroes.
It was like 2 different companies that they had for set cleaners.
That's awesome.
No, it is worth emphasizing that. I mean, aside from an absolute engine of both taking and dishing out damage, Iko Uwais is just absolutely amazing as a charisma and a physical presence in this picture,
and
and worth seeing for every second he's on screen just to see now what's going to happen.
and
the guy's reflexes, even if they are accelerating the film, have got to be absolutely freaking astonishing.
Yeah, and it's also not. This is not the standard karate that we see in most films either. This is all Indonesian silat, which is a very, from my little knowledge of it, and looks completely different than you see anywhere else. There's a whole lot of like joint hooking and a lot of very sinuous movement involved in a lot of these, as well as extremely rapid strikes.
And I find it absolutely amazing that Evans is actually credited as the fight choreographer in this. This is a martial arts movie that had fight choreography by a Welshman.
It really? Oh, wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
I knew the main actor was credited as well. It was
Yeah, he was. Apparently, Silat school. So Gareth would give general parameters, he said, and then he would say, well, now I have to go do something important. And he'd go into his trailer and play Candy Crush for 20 minutes and then come back out and see what they'd made up. And so he would help, but I think he very readily gives credit where credit is due to the creativity of the various scenes and the different moves and things like that. Although I have to credit the cinematography in this too, as there were several points where it mimicked the action that I thought was, to me, look, not a filmmaker, but especially the bit in the porn den where he's running down the table and then went sideways through the mirror and the camera just shifted over and fell with him.
Yes.
Yeah. Now there are a lot of camera movements in this, particularly during
the car chase.
During the car chase, where we were thinking, how in the hell did they pull that off?
They start in the front car and go all the way to the back car and focus
I know
in
how
on
they
the
did
driver.
that.
Crazy
I know how
cool.
they did that.
How
Do you want to
did they
know?
do that? Yes, please.
Okay, they had a camera crew truck that was running apace with the first car, carrying the camera, and they carried it to the second car, and they passed it in, and the second cameraman was dressed as the seat. So he was actually wearing the seat, and then he reached up and carried the camera past his own head, which was the headrest, into the back seat, passed it out that window to a third cameraman who was lying on a track, bolted to the side of the car, and just reached up to steady the camera as it came out the window.
Neat.
Wow.
So, yeah, life is cheap there.
It knew as much as anything else how perilous this was, not only for the people in front of the camera, but presumably the people behind the camera.
Maybe even more so for
Yeah,
the people behind.
You know,
apparently they were going about 60 kilometers an hour at the time. So
that story actually reminds me a lot of the old Hong Kong action films in the 80s that their ability to get certain shots that you just couldn't get in the US because of, they could die.
Yeah.
Like old school, like 80s Jackie Chan movies.
Yeah, like Jackie Chan finishing a movie with a cast on his leg that looks like a shoe.
Like, we're going to drop a building on you, but if you stand right here, we'll be fine. The numbers add up.
Well, does anybody have any final thoughts they want to share on the raid before we head out?
I was not disappointed.
No, I really like this. I didn't feel the length as much as some of y'all did.
Yeah,
I guess I didn't either, really.
I liked it. I prefer the first one still.
Yeah.
The first one is definitely more crackerjack.
Linear.
I
format.
like even if the plot borders on the incomprehensible, particularly for people who don't actually speak the language. And there is so much more plot. The action sequences in this are absolutely jaw-droppingly astonishing.
And camera work.
Yeah, the camera work is amazing. The fighting is amazing. This is not a movie to go into lightly. There's a lot more of it than I realized at first. Somebody expecting a more tight and focused experience like The Raid is Well, again, it's a metaphor that I keep coming back to a lot lately. Is it's sort of the Terminator 2 to the first one's Terminator.
Mm.
It's a lot more expansive. It's or possibly Aliens to the first one's Alien. It's a lot more expansive. It covers a lot more ground, both sort of literally and figuratively, but also
It's 2.5 hours.
It's 2.5
Yeah.
hours. I think
Yeah.
it improves on some of the already considerable strengths of the first one. It is not Crackerjack. It is the furthest fucking thing from Crackerjack.
Yeah, I'm with Shane on this one. I liked the first one. As I thought the first one was an absolutely brilliant piece of filmmaking that subverted not only action films but filmmaking in general with the way it was shot. It took some risks that I'd never seen before, and I loved it. But this one felt a little more by the numbers to me, and I thought that it was overly indulgent in its runtime. The action scenes were very good, the acting was very good, the editing was very good. It was a fine film, and I don't dislike it. I just think it was overly indulgent.
I did like the first one better, straight up, but this is definitely worth a watch, though.
I haven't seen the original in years,
like I say,
so I can't even comment.
I think I actually have to go with this one, although I don't know that there's any particularly relatively objective reason why.
You like gore.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
It's like I say, you want to make me nervous? Show me a farce. You want me relaxed? Show me something where people are getting cut to pieces. Virtually, not literally. Real blood makes me scream. Anyway.
Probably in a coma by now after watching that. Sorry, David.
Well, why don't we call it for this week there? We're gonna that's gonna do it for us. Blah blah blah. You can find us on
Wow.
Facebook and Twitter at What's on the Pile. You can go to YouTube under Punch Bunny. You'll find us there. Or you can visit our website, whatsonthepile.com. Please come and say hi. Just say hi. I know we have the fans. I see the numbers. I know you're out there. Say hi on Twitter. Say hi on Facebook. We would love to hear from you. Do you have an idea?
Email.
Yeah.
We'll read email. Suggest movies you want us to yap about.
Suggest movies.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Come about. Do it.
Yeah.
All right. That'll do it for us. Good night.